Let's talk threads. So when you're going to order a custom hose, you'll see that we need to know the hose end or the tube nut designation to properly connect to your ports. And you may wonder, how do I know what I need for my application? So we're going to go over how you identify that. This is a M10 by 1.0 male tube nut on a tube style end that would thread into a female port. So one thing we can do is we can measure the diameter of the threads, and you'll see that comes out to just under 10 millimeters, which is normal, that it will read a little small. One other thing to point out is that the size of the port is not the same as the wrench hex size. As you'll see, I'm measuring the hex here, and that is 11 millimeters, even though this is a 10 millimeter port. Next, you'll need to identify the pitch of the threads. So this is just a thread pitch tool. This is a 1.0 thread, and you can lay that in the threads. They'll match up. You'll know what threads pitch you have. And then a more simple way to go about this is to do a thread checker tool. So this will give you something to physically thread into to tell you that you have the right size. And then this would be a female version of an M10 by 1.0. You'll have a male side to your thread checker tool. These are very helpful, and there was a time when these were very expensive, but nowadays there's a lot of cheap options out there. Even on Amazon, there are some as cheap as $16. So this would be a good pickup for you if you're trying to designate threads with us and you're not sure what port size you have. Some common tube nut sizes that you may see will have SAE and metric variations depending on the vehicle. So SAE 3/8 24, 7/16 24, 7/16 20, ½ inch 20, 9/16 18 are all common on the SAE side. On the metric side, you may see M10 by 1.0, M10 by 1.5, M11 by 1.5, M12 by 1.0, 125, 1.5, and even some M14 by 1.5 on master cylinder ports. To identify these, they get a little tricky, especially when it used to be very simple that American cars used SAE and the rest of the world used metric. However, in the 80s, American cars started doing a mixed batch of where some components were metric, some were SAE. It got a little confusing. Once you started getting through the early 2000s, most of the American stuff is going to be metric now. But if you're in some range where you're unsure what you should use, I would definitely recommend that you have a brake thread checker tool of both SAE and metric. And the reason that I recommend that is because there are some tricky ones that might get you caught up, and I'm going to give you one example of that. 3/8 24, a very common SAE size, and M10 by 1.0 is a very common metric size. So one thing that you will notice, I have an M10 by 1.0 and a 3/8 24 thread checker tool here. A 3/8 24 is just slightly smaller than an M10 by 1.0. It will thread into an M10 by 1.0 hole. However, once you get to the bottom and you begin to put torque on it, it will likely pull the threads out and damage the port. It fits properly and snugly into the 3/8 24. Now, with an M10 by 1.0, you will be able to thread it into the M10 thread checker tool, but it will be just slightly larger to the point that you cannot thread it into a 3/8 24 hole. So if you have a port that you're not sure if it's SAE or a metric, and you have an SAE and a metric thread checker tool, I would find similar sizes and pitch and attempt to thread them both in so you can make sure you know exactly what you have. Another hose end designation you might see is something that's referred to as AN or AN sizes, such as 3AN, 4AN, 6AN. So AN stands for Army Navy, and they were developed by the American military during World War II as a standardized system. Now, AN is completely different from your standard port sizes on a vehicle. AN is very common in the automotive aftermarket, though. I have not seen a vehicle yet that uses an AN size from the factory. So usually if you're going to be using an AN size, there will be some kind of adapter to convert that factory port size to an AN size. AN sizes are, the number designates the amount of 1/16 of an inch of the diameter of the hose. Or for example, 3AN would be 3/16, which is very common for brake line. 4AN, 4/16 or 1/4 inch. 6AN, 6/16 or 3/8 inch. These are all common sizes. Now, Because they were developed by the American military in World War II long ago, they do use SAE sizes of threads. So all of your tube nuts are typically going to be female, and they're going to use an SAE thread. Now, one thing I will caution you is that because they use SAE threads and you may have an SAE port, understand that these are not the same. So for example, this is a 3/8 24, which is the same thread as a 3AN tube nut. Now, while they will thread together, they are not the same. And the difference has mostly to do with the flare inside of it, 37 degree versus 45 degree flare angle, but we will cover flare angles on a different video. One last thing that I want to urge you to be aware of. There's a lot of information that you can find today using AI or ChatGPT. I will say that I have attempted to look up several port sizes that I knew what they were and found that some of the info that is out there on AI resources is incorrect. So if you do plan to try to hit the AI easy button, just know that actually physically identifying your thread ports is going to be the right way to do this and ensure that you get it right 100% of the time. When we do make custom hoses, they are going to be made to your requested specs, ends, what have you. They are not returnable because they are custom items. So just be aware of that before you go trusting a resource that we're not sure of the validity of the information.